Hello and welcome to Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I am your host, Meagan, and my amazing co-host is...
Hey, I'm Amanda.
Hello. We are your messy, imperfect homeschool mom friends. We show up week after week as our authentic selves. Today, for me, that means hair that really probably should have been washed before this video was recorded and all. And we share fully honest perspectives about homeschooling. No influencer vibes here. No, you should totally try this program that I've never actually used, but I have an affiliate link for. Just the whole truth and nothing but the truth here.
Yeah, and the unfiltered truth, right? Which is so important in grown-up relationships. I don't know, have you ever made a new friend, but no matter how honest and real you are with them, they just never really open up with you? No, I don't know about you. It's hard, right?
Well, I feel like you live in Southern California, and I spent my formative adult, young momming years in Miami. And so I feel like for the two of us in particular, that's the definition of the places that we've lived, right? Where the persona is more important than the actual person.
Yeah, no, that's it exactly. And I don't know, I just want real friendships where you can be honest and I had a good day, let me brag about my kid. Also, I had a really shit week and I know not for you, but just come have a drink with me. Help me drown my sorrows this week, right? That's the kind of friendship and community that I'm looking for. And so we definitely try to bring that here in this space.
If you invite me for a slice of pepperoni pizza and a Coke, I'll be there. Because if you give me anything salty and sweet, I'm in. That's my version of going and having a drink.
We can make that work. So the other thing that you're going to find here are secular and progressive views. There's no blessed be the fruit, all lives matter crap happening here. The world is a dumpster fire, and as Elie Wiesel told us, neutrality only helps the oppressor. So we proudly proclaim our values here at Homeschool Moms Unfiltered.
We sure do. It also just helps you realize you're not alone, because the vast majority of homeschool channels or outlets are conservative and or religious based. Even if they're not loud about it, you see something and you kind of dip your toe and you enter cautiously, and then you barely scratch the surface and bam, there it is.
Oh, okay.
I am not in the spot I'm supposed to be in. So here we leave nothing to the imagination. We are pro-choice. We are pro-equality, we are pro-human rights, and we are anti-having a rapist and pedophile as a president.
Yeah, yeah. So if he's been feeling isolated and thinking that you're the only homeschooler who feels this way, please know that you're not. There are tons of us, literally thousands and thousands of us, okay? Now, today, we are going to be talking about social emotional learning, what it is, why it matters, and how you can nurture it at home in ways that are not only good, but feel natural and meaningful. So now, if you aren't sure what SEL even is, but you know maybe your local school district teaches it and you want to include it in your homeschool, or maybe your learner is struggling with big feelings or just needs help building confidence and connection, we're going to talk about what exactly it is and share some simple everyday ways to support emotional growth without adding oodles and oodles of extra work to your plate, because nobody needs that.
Yeah, no, I don't need that. I will say, going back to your world is on fire comment, I'm struggling with big feelings. Just your little learners. I'm struggling. Thanks. Yeah. Oh my God, make it down. But first, before we get into all of that, we start every episode off here with a weekly recap. It's part of our Keeping It Real vibe. So how's your week been, Amanda?
Yeah, it's been. I'm mostly feeling okay. We had our mystery vacation last week, and we were in San Francisco for all of 40 hours. So, getting there and doing tons and tons and tons of stuff, and then coming back home, and I was I'm going to stay in bed all day. And then there was another day of I'm going to stay in bed most of the day. But I I held it together pretty well, I think, and we slipped in an extra day of Christmas and July fun because July is almost over, so we had to make sure we got that in. Yeah, and I think it's just kind of one of those things. Like I was really looking forward to summer break, and we do homeschool year round, but we take it easier in the summer. I'm just like, what happened? It's not been easy yet, and summer's almost over. Like I have friends who are already posting pictures of their kids like back in brick and mortar school. I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm still waiting for an easy week. So, and it's not like it's not happening next week. Maybe it happened the week after that, but then it's definitely not the week after that. So I don't. Yeah, we're just we're just hanging on here.
One of these days.
Yeah. No, probably not. Let's be real. Probably not. I don't know. How old's my kiddo? Probably like, I don't know, another 5 to 10 years, depending on where he goes off to university. So, yeah, there we go. How about you? How's your week been?
Busy but good.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from the world being on fire, of course, good. But yeah. So my youngest kiddo and I are in Berlin. He qualified for the Yu-Gi-Oh! European Nationals tournament. If you don't know what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, it's kind of like Pokemon, just a little bit further into like the nerd hole than Pokemon is. And so there's like thousands of people here playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In fact, we're recording, it's almost 10 o'clock at night, and he's downstairs in the lobby at the hotel because we're not terribly far from where the event is being held. And so there's a bunch of people staying in our hotel that are playing at the event. So every night they all congregate down in the lobby, and as if playing for like 9 hours today wasn't enough, and then they play well into the night. So yeah. So he's been doing that, which is really good. So yesterday I was all by myself, which was fun. I went on a 4-hour walking tour in Berlin, which was pretty cool. It's interesting because it's challenging to find some of the World War II sites in different places in Europe for different reasons. So like in Warsaw, when we were there, it's hard to find some things because there was so much destruction that it's like, do you see this one brick? This is what's left of this huge thing. And you're like, oh, okay. In Berlin, it's quite different. It's that there's such a need to strip away. They don't hide the history. They teach it very in depth. They are very, very diligent about teaching what happened, how it happened, why it can't happen again. So they're not hiding the history, but they don't want the places that are notable places to become shrines or to have any noticeable effect of what happened. So yesterday I went on this tour and we're standing in this parking lot, and the guy's like, so we're standing on top of the bunker where Hitler killed himself. And it's a parking lot, and there's not even anything there to say, like, hey, this is a thing or whatever. I mean, there's just nothing. They've really, and they said sometimes on his birthday, flowers will appear there, and the German police are monitoring constantly, and the flowers disappear. If somebody can sneak something in there as a memorial, it's immediately addressed and taken care of. So it was really interesting, but it can be hard to find some stuff. So that's why I like to do a tour, because then you can kind of find things. But it did mean walking 9 miles yesterday in total. So by the end of last night, my feet were like, oh my gosh, we're so done. But that was good. So tomorrow Liam is off. We don't fly back till Tuesday. And so we were thinking about doing maybe like a Segway tour tomorrow or something. So we'll see what we decide to do tomorrow. I'm kind of waiting to see what the weather. It's been overcast the whole time we've been here, and every day it says it's going to rain, and then it hasn't rained. So I'm like, but I'm just waiting to book a tour until I know, because I don't really want to get soaked on a Segway. That sounds like less fun.
I don't know. Well, sounds like a blast.
Exactly right. I'm like, I don't know. We'll have to see. So yeah, and my big kids, by the time this episode drops, I'll be home. So I feel safe telling you my big kids have been home alone this weekend, which is a momentous occasion for us. They've never rocked solo life before. So I've been keeping tabs on them. I mean, my oldest is almost 18, so he's perfectly capable of manning the house, and he's solo traveled for 6 weeks at a time, and all, I'm like, they're fine. But my daughter has solo traveled and all of that. So, but still, it's like, it's a big thing to just leave and be like, you guys good? I'll see you next week. It's a weird stage of parenting. So that's that. And then the only other exciting update that I have is the Shiny Happy People, the train wreck documentary on Amazon Prime about Christian nationalism, has dropped their second season. The first season had to do a lot with homeschooling, so a lot of homeschoolers watched it. If you haven't watched it, you must. It does not paint homeschooling in a great light. And my big concern with it was that people would struggle to differentiate sane homeschoolers from the ones portrayed in the documentary. So season 2, I didn't know what season 2 was. I thought it might be more about homeschooling. So I was like pretty pumped about that. It wasn't, but it has the same theme of how we've ended up where we are in the United States today by seeding people into the government. Like this is a long-term strategy that we have these religious zealots running the government and these lobby groups and stuff. It was absolutely bonkers. The first 2 episodes, it's 3 episodes, right? The first 2 episodes you're watching and you're kind of like, oh, this is wild. This is bananas, like blah, blah, blah. And then the 3rd episode, when they show you what the ultimate game plan is and how it's all played out, you're like, holy crap. So if you haven't watched it yet, you have to watch season 1 because it has to do with homeschooling. But season 2, definitely. And I feel like too, that first season that dealt with homeschooling, we hear from people all the time who are like, I'm getting backlash about my choice to homeschool and blah, 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 blah. If you watch that first season where they talk about homeschooling, I feel like sometimes that explains why people are the way they are about homeschooling, because then you go, oh, this is what you thought out. No, 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 no. That is not what we're doing.
Yeah.
I have not bubbled my children and taught them submissive Bible study. We are a different branch of homeschooling altogether. So it might help you understand people's objections a little bit, but at the same time, blow your mind. So you must watch it. But yeah, it's on Amazon. I know we don't like Amazon, but it's on there and you must watch it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the first one. I don't know, we might have talked about this before, but I really enjoy following on Instagram Paul and Matthew.
I
They're
love
like
them.
an adorable couple, right? And his service dog, Mr. Maple.
Mr. Maple.
So, right, he's amazing. But the musician of the two, so right, it's maybe
Matthew.
I'm like, I feel like, yeah, because he's always like, he. Okay. But so yeah, the musician of the two, he grew up in that whole thing, and he obviously he got out of it. He's married to a lovely man, they're partners, and he's playing music as a profession, which is also not allowed. But it's been fascinating to watch some of his videos where he talks about what was allowed and what wasn't, and how he got accepted to Juilliard. He wasn't allowed to go because it went against the teachings of his homeschool life and the religion, all that. It's like really mind blowing. Anyway,
Yeah, I adore them. They're super cute. And Paul has written books too. So if you're looking for some amazing inclusive books to bring in for young kiddos, he's legally blind. He has like 0.5% of his eyesight left. I think at this point it's a degenerative disease, and he's an artist. So he zooms way the hell in on digital devices to do the artwork for his books and stuff. He's amazing. They both are. They're the coolest cats.
yeah,
So.
they're amazing. Their books are great. They come with cute stuffies. And if you're like, my kids are past the book stage, calendars and prints and all kinds of like great things. There's lots of easy ways to support them. Even going and following their channel would be awesome.
Yeah, love it. All right, so today we are all about SEL, social emotional learning, SEL, and why it matters.
Yeah.
So social emotional learning, listen, if you're still with us and we haven't turned you off by talking about the president being a pedophile and Paul writing books about same-sex penguin couples and all kinds of stuff, then we're going to guess we don't have to sell you on the fact that teaching your kids social emotional learning is important. The people who think that that's fluff and fuck your feelings and all that, they've left us already at this point in the episode. So anyway, we lost them with your time 15 solid minutes ago, right? But SEL is foundational to developing our kiddos. It supports academic success, mental health, their long-term well-being. And for homeschoolers, we're not just educating our kids. We're not just teaching them algebra. We're not just teaching them how to write a 5-paragraph essay. We are, or at least I hope we are, as a whole, as a community, raising entire human beings. And so their social, emotional well-being is massively important in that. It's more than just a one-off lesson where like, well, today we're going to explode a volcano. We're going to do a multiplication work page. And then we're going to do an activity on kindness. And we're going to check that box and move on with our day. It's so much more than that. It is an entire way of being. And it really needs to be one of the foundation stones of your parenting, of your education, of your just developing this little human that at some point is going to go off into the world and hopefully make it more amazing, because right now it's on fire. So that would be awesome. So if you are struggling with SEL, you're new to homeschooling, you're just not quite sure how to wrap your mind around this. And let's be honest, we come across how many people in the homeschool community that are making conscious efforts to do things differently than the way they were raised. So, I mean, in some respects, we're doing that in certain parts, right? Like I had a super religious education growing up and things like that. So it might be foreign to you. You might be like, I totally agree. I'm with you. I'm here for it, but I'm stuck because I never got this. I was raised by the fuck your feelings crowd. So now what do I do? So that's what we're going to talk about. It's more than a worksheet and it's more than checking a box. It's working it into our everyday routines. And if you're here listening to us and you're still with us at this point, you're probably already doing more of it than you realize. So that's the awesome news, which is great.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so the experts are pretty unanimous in the fact that like SEL instruction should be integrated into the school day or like life in general. It's not just like Meagan said, it's not just a one subject kind of thing or a single discrete lesson and then you move on. And now, if you listen to us for any amount of time, you know that we like our peer-reviewed research and our quality sources. So we pulled some quotes for you from an educationweek.org article. And it talks about the fact that social emotional curricula that manifest in everyday routines pulled across all courses are more likely to be effective. Like it goes on to say, you don't want curriculum where kids practice having relationships. So, I mean, you know, again, that idea of like, you can practice things. There's definitely a time and a place for practicing how you're going to interact with someone or how you're going to handle something or deal with something. But you don't want that to be the only way that you're practicing this.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, we still practice stuff and I have teenagers where today I said to my kiddo, go up to the front desk and blah, blah, blah. And you could see this moment of hesitation, this like deer in the headlights thing. And it's like, I already know the kinds of things that they're going to ask him when he goes to ask for XYZ and what information. And they're going to ask you for blah, blah, blah. You're going to say blah, blah, blah. Okay. You know, just that little bit of reassurance because they don't know what to expect sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So not only should SEL skills be embedded into whatever curricula activities we're doing in all subjects, it should be explicit. So we're doing it both ways. We're kind of organic, but then we're also kind of pointing things out in a more direct way. Another expert from some of the studies that we looked at pointed out that she looks for curricula that helps teachers be very clear on how to teach these particular skills. So she says, say it's the difference between we are going to have some time in class for X, and I am going to teach you what empathy is. Here's what the word means. Here's what it looks like and smells like. And here's what happens when you use it and don't use it. You have to teach these skills, she says.
Yeah, well, right. And I mean, I think it's that thing, right? I think you're picking up what we're putting down. But basically, these skills, they're important. There are lots of ways to teach them. We're going to talk about that some more. But try to avoid just buying a workbook or a boxed curriculum or a set of lessons and using it like you might with math or history or something else where you just set your kiddo free. Like, here it is, go work on this. It's not the best way to do it. So again, like the research shows that you really need to actually do these things and practice them and make sure it shows up in like the real day-to-day dynamics of your life and what you're doing, because that's where your kiddo is actually going to learn, and not only learn, but it's going to stick. We don't want this to be one of those like kind of obscure things that you teach and it, you know, it ends up being like a history lesson full of dates and wars and battles. And you're like, okay, yeah, I've got it. Empathy, you know, compassion. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now next, you know, and it gets filed away somewhere, maybe to be pulled out at some point, but probably not.
Probably not, because I can't tell you anything about all the dates of battles that I learned in school.
Exactly.
Probably not. Yeah. So when you're working on SEL concepts, our goal is to try and avoid kind of empty, vague phrases, but to really give kids things that are actionable, that they can understand, that they can sink their teeth into a little bit more. I kind of relate it to 1880s parenting, where you would say to your kids, "You're so smart," or the cringeworthy that every little girl got, "You're so pretty," right? And it's just these really general, vague compliments that we threw at people. SEL is kind of similar. So we want to avoid things like, "We believe in being kind." What does that mean? I mean, I think you'd struggle to find a parent who says to their kids, "Our goal on the regular is to be the biggest assholes you possibly could be in the free world, right? Like nobody is saying that. So we believe in kind is such a blanket statement that it doesn't really mean anything because it's really like, what does that look like to you? How does that come into play? What does that feel like in day-to-day life? Other things like let's be nice to each other, treat others the way you want to be treated. The good old golden rule, good vibes only, just be friends. We value and respect empathy here. They probably don't even really fully grasp empathy if you're using high level statements that are so vague like that. Or my ever popular favorite, make good choices. I mean, I think most people set out to make good choices, but we didn't, most, right? We didn't, and that number might be slipping. I don't know. I go back to Wilson Clymer. Really not. I mean, there have been across Europe yesterday, there were these massive protests and the police presence was astounding and so overwhelming, and which is a good thing. I mean, the protests were safe and peaceful and the whole thing, but it's overwhelming when you're in that space and it's like living in a police state. It's very overwhelming. And so, yeah, I'm kind of in this like everything is falling apart mindset right now. Sorry, I could really use some social emotional support. But I think most people set out to make good choices. But we did an episode a while ago about kids not having fully developed frontal cortexes in their little noggins. So yeah, they're trying to make good choices, but they physically cannot sometimes. So telling them to make good choices is great, but it's not always that straightforward. So, they're positive sayings. They sound lovely, but they don't give learners anything specific or actionable. They don't have examples that they can work from or any context to really make that mean anything to them.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, that's all true. I will say if you are actively working on one of these skills and you use one of these phrases as like a gentle reminder to like, hey, kiddo, take a beat. Remember what we've been learning and practicing, right? That's considered scaffolding, which is a good thing. If you have been listening to us and all of that, like we're big fans of scaffolding, especially these kinds of big life skills that they're going to be working on through their entire childhood and into adulthood.
Right. Well, and I'm a huge fan of a mantra for things like that, right? I mean, when my kiddo was little, kind and calm was one of his mantras. But kind and calm, to your point, was the whole lesson. There had been a massive talk, and kind and calm was an agreed upon code word to kind of bring him back when he felt like he was slipping. So yeah, those totally work.
Yeah, exactly. But to give you some ideas, instead of these general vague statements without context, you could try to make sure that if you're in a moment where you can say more, right? It might be something along the lines of kindness means helping someone when they're struggling, like offering to share your crayons or checking in with a friend who looks upset. Or maybe you take a minute and you say, empathy is when you try to imagine how someone else feels. If your friend looks sad because they dropped their lunch, you can say, I'm sorry that happened. Do you want to sit with me? It's these moments where you just take a little bit more time. And we know it's not always possible. In the heat of the moment, stuff's going down, and you can't always be like, this is a great time to explain what empathy is. But there are those times. You maybe say, like, when the older relative is like, you need to show more respect, and they kind of storm off. And that's when you can turn to your kiddo and say, well, being respectful means listening without interrupting when someone else is talking, even if you don't agree. But in our home, we give respect to the people who give us respect. Like respect is kind of earned, or whatever your rules are in your own home, right? It's this idea that instead of just shutting your kiddo down in the moment or using these kind of like vague platitudes, you take that moment to just give a little bit more context, and that's teaching in the moment, and that's going to be so much more effective. Okay, so while we really should be modeling SEL skills in day-to-day life, we also need to make sure that we're teaching these social emotional skills explicitly. And so again, in those moments where you can model them, that's wonderful. But it's also important when you're not in a moment that you can take the time to say something like, empathy means putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Here's what that looks like when someone is upset. Again, you can have these opportunities, like, for example, One of my kiddos' best friends was really struggling a bit in his brick and mortar school. And he mentioned how much the other kids saying they were friends, but then doing like really unkind things to each other right in front of them and to them, and then also behind their backs, like how much that was really bothering him. And then he said how much he appreciated what a good friend my kiddo is to him. And my kiddo was like, I don't really like, okay, that's kind of weird. I don't really know what that means. I'm not doing anything special. And in that moment, it wasn't the right time to be able to really go into it. So in that moment, I can't really scaffold and teach this, but I can say that's a great point, and we should totally talk about that when we get home. Let's revisit that later. And then later on, we can sit down and have a real talk, right? About like, well, look, these are, what are the things that make a good friend, and what things should we do to avoid that? What should we avoid if we want to be a good friend? And what makes you feel valued and like this is a good friend versus someone who's just and you can have these bigger, longer conversations. You don't need a curriculum to help you do that, but it's still hugely important. And it's explicit because you're talking about what really makes a good friend and what doesn't.
Yeah, I love that. And there's so many of those situations as they're out in the world and interacting with other humans and all of this. I mean, I shared in episodes or earlier in the spring about prom, that my daughter went to prom, and that's a whole, right? Who's going with who? And what if this one asks me and then I already have somebody, but now this person said, so how do I answer them so that I don't hurt their feeling? I mean, oh my gosh, just so much fun, right? So there's so many instances to really take that time and do those things.
Yeah. And those are exactly the kinds, right? There are 100% times in life when right then in that moment, you can take a beat and you can explain some things, or you can drop some knowledge, and you can help with the parenting. And there are definitely times when you're like, we will talk about this more later. Right now, in this moment, is not the time for us to have this conversation, but let's make sure we circle back. It works.
Yeah, for sure. So the other thing is, and this should come as no surprise from me, who's the unschooler between us, the surprising part should be that Amanda told you that you don't need SEL curriculum to do certain things. Miss I Thought potty training curriculum just said you don't need a curriculum for this. So that should be surprising to you.
Har, har, har.
What is not surprising is the fact that I would love to share the fact that you can embed SEL in everything that you do, which has such incredible unschooly / unit study / whatever undertones to it, where everything is intermeshed and everything is mixed together, just like it is in real life. And you can kind of take those opportunities as you're doing other things. So I mean, history is the first one where there's definitely going to be opportunities to discuss social emotional learning examples and skills, and to understand how people that experience certain things in history would feel during those times, and to try to talk through some of those things, but then also to understand how your child is feeling. History, if you're doing it properly, is very heavy and very difficult most of the time. So yeah, so that's all there. You can use science discussions to practice respectful disagreement as far as interpretations of results or things that you're analyzing. All of that can be true. You can have that in math as well when you're kind of looking at numbers from different perspectives. Also with math, just in general, when your kiddo gets frustrated, there's your self-regulation lesson. Set the math aside, take a moment, take a breath, talk through it. Maybe there's something that you can identify within math or within the process, your current process for math, that you're thinking, oh, every time we get to X point, or every time this happens, I feel this way. And if you can start to notice what those things are and kind of put some scaffolding into place or put a process into place, then it gives them the tools to be able to recognize the emotion that's creeping up, how to handle it, how to create a process, all of which is brilliant. So it's in everything. It's in absolutely everything, which is awesome.
Okay, so we have some specifics we're going to share, because even though I said you don't need a curriculum, I totally have suggestions. But before we get to that, just a quick reminder, if you're listening to us and you're like, I really appreciate this. I appreciate the content you're putting. All of your favorite creators, everyone who's putting stuff out and consistently showing up and trying to provide community and information and all of this stuff. We totally appreciate any kind of monetary support that you provide. And obviously, it's not necessary. We're happy to put this out. It's free and we love doing that. But we have two options. There's Buy Me a Coffee, which a lot of your other favorite folks are out there using, I'm sure. But we are on Buy Me a Coffee. Shockingly, it's called Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. If you look for us on Buy Me a Coffee, it'll be pretty easy to find us. You can do, $5 or whatever. We super appreciate it. And then if you want to do something more regular, you can do it on Buy Me a Coffee, but we also have just a general like $5 membership level over on Patreon where you can kind of be like, hey, I appreciate you and I just want to give you a little bit each month. I know some of my favorite creators I do that for because I just really go to them for a lot of important things and I want to make sure that they know I appreciate what they're putting out there. And so we absolutely appreciate it when you do that for us. So just a little reminder, whether it's for us or other creators, I think it's hugely important to support the free labor and work that's going on out there, especially these days. Ooh, especially these days. Okay, so like I said, maybe you're listening to this and you're all, yep, I'm totally picking up what you're putting down, but also I think I need some resources. Because if you've listened to us for very long, I love me some resources, books, workbooks, videos, whatever. And my kiddo likes to learn that way too, right? So it works well for us in our household. So just some ideas of some of my favorites, which obviously nowhere close to an exhaustive list, but a great place to start. So there are some great books, things like Last Stop on Marketplace. We Don't Eat Our Classmates. That's a super fun, cute book that you can have all kinds of lessons on. And I'm 100% positive that you can find some worksheets and other things that go along with that. If you're like, I don't even know where to start with doing more with this. Little Monkey Calms Down. That's one of those books. I've talked about it before on the podcast. That was huge in our family because it talks about specific strategies for self-regulation. And then when my kiddo would start getting upset, I could just use the title of the book. And that would be his kind of trigger of like, hey, let me think about those things. Which do I want to do? So things like that. And then there's also, it's a pretty popular book, but it's called Have You Filled a Bucket Today? If you don't already have it on your bookshelf, it's definitely worth looking at and good for just a lot of different lessons and maybe a little bit better. What is that book called? The Giving Tree that we grew up with. It talks about like basically selflessly giving everything of yourself to someone. Like maybe let's draw healthier boundaries. Maybe start with Have You Filled a Bucket Today instead of The Giving Tree. And then honestly, like social media, it is full of lists and posts and reels that have just tons of great SEL book recommendations. There are so many out there now. There's so many good ones. So if you have all of these and you're like, oh, I just want more, I just want to make sure that we have a lot on our bookshelf or that we maybe get some different ones each week at the library, like really social media and even just like a Google search, right? There are blogs on it and all kinds of things. Easy peasy. I also really like the Unworry book series. It's from Usborne. You can get it in some shops and online and things like that. But they have like a doodle book and a painting book and a workbook. And one of them has QR codes that plays music to help as you're doing, like coloring. And like, I just think they're a great book and you work through different activities and stuff. But it's a SEL book for kind of all kids with whatever they're dealing with, even though it's called the Unworry book. It's just a good general self-regulation practice. Some other workbooks that I also really like are the Be Brave and Hello Happy books from the Mindful Kids series. They talk about self-confidence and identifying emotions and just practicing those kinds of things. And they're affordable. They're like $6, $7. So you could totally get one for your kiddo and get one for yourself and do it together and show them that like, hey, I can still learn. I'm a grown-up and I still have plenty to learn and practice when it comes to emotions and self-regulation and all of these things. Like model. We talk all the time. Right? We talk all the time about free resources and still close to free resources, right? A couple of favorites that we've mentioned before. Twinkle, it's Twinkle without an E at the end. It's kind of like a marketplace of worksheets and things like that. And at least once a year, they have a free day where you can just get loads and loads and loads of things. And they have a ton of SEL worksheets there. So it's worth going and giving a look, maybe saving some links and sign up so that you get noticed when it's their free day. So you can go scoop those up. Teachers Pay Teachers always has tons of options and things. There'll be some that are free. There'll be some that cost a little bit more, but loads of options for whatever you're looking for at whatever grade level you're looking for. So you have those kinds of things. One other thing that I think is like really fun to do is the Inside Out movies. They are so good and they're so spot on with this. And you can get activities from the actual movies, like the people that put out the movies, they have activities that go along with it. But there are loads of resources online. You can go through and look and find the ones that most fit with your kiddo, with what you want to focus on. Sometimes you just watch the movie and you do certain activities. Sometimes you watch specific clips and then do activities or things like that related to that. But a great way, Inside Out 1 and 2, if you want to go beyond that, there are some amazing YouTube videos where they actually talk with the psychologists that were behind it and helped put it together and make these decisions and stuff like that. Tons of resources and a fun way, right? Like this is, again, kind of one of those, like, the movie's great and your kiddo is going to enjoy engaging in this way, and you can take it another step further without it having to be boring, truly curriculum, like, oh, I have to learn about empathy today. Like, I mean, everyone's going to enjoy ennui way more than like, sit down for your empathy lesson. And then I'm going to be honest, I am not crazy about their new membership system that they've recently rolled out. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it doesn't last long. But OutSchool does have some really great SEL options. So always worth taking a look at, especially if you're already using it and you're up on the membership and you've done all of that. They have great providers who are doing some really awesome things with SEL.
Yeah, I'll second that vote on the membership system. We'll see what happens there. We shall see. All right. So yeah. All right. So the other thing to bear in mind, we talked about at the beginning of the episode, but yes, you can buy all the resources, and Amanda loves her resources and her recommendations are always so spot on. But the other thing too to bear in mind is that we said it at the beginning of the episode, if you're an active, engaged parent, you're probably already doing a ton of this stuff without even necessarily realizing it. And so there's, I think, some benefit in identifying what you're already doing so that you can go, oh, that's an SEL lesson, and maybe ways to figure out how to do more of it in that organic fashion. So if you're already focusing on connection and growth and whole child learning, you're doing it. You're doing it. And as your kids grow, there'll be more of that. So we'll talk a little bit about what it looks like in the younger years and then what it looks like in the teen years. So, I mean, as far as when they're little, identifying emotions, I mean, we've all done it. I can see that you're frustrated right now, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing is giving them the tools to be able to recognize other people's emotions based upon their facial expression or their body language. We actually started recording a little bit later today because I had ordered something for us for dinner. We're out of town and it was late in coming. And I was so hungry that I actually recognized in a moment that I was like, I'm going to break my laptop. I'm typing so hard because I was so hangry. Right. And so it's like, you can tell in our own family, you can tell when somebody's hangry in your family, right? But kids don't necessarily have that ability. And that's how we end up exploding sometimes because they keep going, but, can I, mom, and they're not picking up on those signals that you're hangry or you're exhausted or whatever, right? And so letting them know those things and being able to say, hey, this is how I'm feeling right now. I just need 5 minutes, or I just need a slice of pizza, which totally fixed me. Having that there is really good. As far as building self-confidence, setting and achieving small goals, celebrating personal strengths, learning how to make mistakes without negative self-talk, these are all so huge. They're such wonderful things. And you're probably already doing a ton of this. And so I don't think you need to turn it into a big formal lesson now that you're like, oh, this was SEL and I've been doing it all along. But maybe just in your own head to kind of be like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. And I have opportunities to do it here or there. Maybe you recognize other places where you can kind of expand those discussions. And then executive function skills, which we talk about all the time, using daily checklists, breaking tasks into steps, practicing short periods of focused work with breaks in between. These are all ways that they can help regulate their emotions and their energy and things like that, which is awesome for social emotional learning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Other things that you can be working on, and again, you probably are, right? Ending up to bullies and practicing assertiveness. Role playing is not always bad. I know earlier we were talking about like, oh, make sure it's incorporated in your day. The reality is you're not always going to be there when your kid has to deal with a bully. Bullies don't really come out in front of the parents. So role playing how to say stop for like, that's okay. It's a good thing. Learning about the difference between assertive and aggressive communication. I don't know how many adults need to learn this. Like, teach your kids so that they know this is so important for life skills. Identifying trusted adults to talk to. This is complicated. It's not as simple as it was when we were kids because what we were taught was not right, right? Like, so working on these kinds of things, and again, you can assume that your kiddo knows, but you know what happens when you assume. So explicit, like teach explicitly. Then you've got things like building and maintaining friendships, just taking turns in conversations, that active listening thing. Learn how to apologize and repair misunderstandings. You can talk about that. You can work through it. There are tons of great channels you can follow and watch little videos on social media and then talk about what the person said and why that matters and if they've had an experience like that, or maybe you've recently had an experience between you and your kiddo and talk about how this really resonated with you and why. Recognizing what makes a friend trustworthy and kind. And under this, I'm going to put discussions around consent and also laying the foundations for what healthy romantic relationships look like. Because let's be real, if you wait until they are teens, first, they're probably not going to listen to you all that much at that point. Come on now. What teen is like, yes, please talk to me about romantic relationships. I can't wait. And then second, honestly, it's probably a bit late for a lot of reasons, but primarily because those habits and patterns, they're fairly solidified by that age. And it takes a lot more effort to change. Now, I know in my home, we joke about the fact that we have a college fund and a therapy fund because I'm sure I'm messing something up and the kiddo's going to need to go to therapy and unpack things and change habits. There's no getting around that. But if we can help set some better patterns and habits from early on, like let's do that. Let's not wait until way late to be like, oh, by the way, I think you should totally change how you address romantic relationships.
Yes, absolutely.
And then we kind of talked about it, but there's study skills and self-regulation, right? So again, just helping them learn, like setting up a distraction-free study space, using timers to stay on task, reflecting on strategies that help, whether it's to calm the body or the brain when it's overwhelmed, or just strategies that they find works for keeping them on task, helping them identify these things and then practicing using them consistently so they feel comfortable doing it on their own as they get older.
Yeah, absolutely. And then as they do get older, it'll look different like everything else. Parenting teens is completely different than parenting little ones. So when they're little, you're focusing on, like we talked about, identifying emotions. You look frustrated, or I'm really hangry, or whatever the case might be. But with teens, it gets way more complex. And then you're starting to deal with things like anxiety and embarrassment and jealousy, but in different forms of relationships. Their relationships change so much when they're teenagers. And so being able to identify those feelings and recognize those patterns over time is so helpful for them. And then self-management with younger kids, you're talking about little monkey, calm down. And hey, you might still be using that as a mantra or a key phrase when your kid's a teenager, because if it sticks with you, it might still work. I mean, there's plenty of things that have carried over from when my kids are younger, but teens are dealing with different types of regulation issues. They're dealing with academic stress, procrastination, or motivation comes in a lot of times. A lot of times that's linked to perfectionism too, that sometimes is an underlying SEL thing that we need to address. They're developing strategies for coping with their mental health before they launch off into the world. So it just looks a little bit different for teenagers.
Yeah, no, for sure. I know you mentioned that. I know my kiddo has taken many classes on SEL. So as much as I talk about how you don't need a curriculum, my kiddos very much enjoyed that. And And he likes doing those classes with someone who's not me, which I understand and I can respect that and support it. But they did a whole 8-week series on perfectionism and addressing it and looking at it and letting it go and understanding good is enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. And it takes a lot of work, right? He's a tween, and already they were really addressing that and stressing it. Some other things that you might be looking at: social awareness and relationship skills. So again, for littles, they need to learn to take turns and share and recognize others' feelings. But with tweens and teens, right, their social circles and challenges have grown. So they often need support with developing empathy across lines of difference and exploring social justice or equity issues. These are big topics, they're big questions, and they need help and support in dealing with them and sorting through them. They're also navigating peer pressure, way more peer pressure, and things that matter more. Hey, at this point, they've always had peer pressure. There's no getting around that. But the peer pressure of it between and teen, definitely different, especially these days. They're going to need support with setting boundaries in romantic relationships and also practicing healthy communication. Hopefully, they've been learning it all along, but they're really going to have to start actually practicing it in these relationships with their friends. When they're little, they're just at the playground playing, not really doing a whole lot of healthy communication and active listening and sharing. But as they get older, they're going to start doing more of that. And hopefully they've been learning it, and this is their chance to actually be practicing it. Then it's the one that we're all like, oh gosh, I don't know. Can teens do this? Responsible decision making. Young kids, for the most part, they have smaller decisions to make. That's, as parents, we try to make sure that our littles are making decisions, but they're nothing that's like too big and too life-changing, right? Things like choosing kind behavior and gentle hands and following basic routine. All of these things, they help lay the foundation for teens who are inevitably going to face much bigger decisions, like making values-based decisions and, oh gosh, handling digital citizenship responsibly and thinking through long-term consequences of their actions. These are hard things. There are plenty of adults who prefer to not think about these things. So, we have to build on this and keep modeling and explicitly work through these things, even when they're like, oh God, please don't talk to me about that anymore. Finding ways to work on those and continue that learning.
I was laughing thinking about the one thinking through long-term consequences, because it's been, I think, like a week and a half now since the whole Coldplay concert, whatever. And the guy's apology, did you see it? It said like he's upset with Coldplay. And now I saw online, whether or not it's true, that he's thinking about suing Coldplay for an invasion of his privacy. I'm like, you were in a stadium with like 200,000 people, dude. Like what semblance of privacy did you expect there? When they're cheating on your wife. And so it's like, when we talk about adults that are lacking these skills, he's a great example.
Yeah, it's not hard to find examples these days. It is so not hard to find examples of people who are not thinking about the long-term consequences and not taking responsibility for the fact that they get to enjoy the long-term consequences.
Exactly, right? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Enjoy.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right. So we're just about wrapped up for the day. Before we share kind of our final words of wisdom and our mantra related to SEL, we would just love to ask you to give us a like, a follow, a share, a review, wherever you are. It helps us tremendously. We talked at the beginning of the episode about how hard it can be to find secular and progressive people in the homeschool space. You have found us. And if you give us a like, a share, a follow, a review, all that fun stuff, it helps more people find us, because the world is run by giant algorithms. So please help. Right. So final thoughts of the episode. SEL is not a checkbox. It is your lens to view everything homeschool and parenting related through. So it is kind of the foundation, as opposed to this add-on thing that's over on the side that you squeeze in whenever you have a chance. If you finish your ELA workbook quickly today, we'll throw in an SEL activity. That's not how we're doing it. So hopefully some food for thought there. as homeschoolers, we have the freedom to model empathy, to handle problem solving. We're oftentimes at the park with our kids, on field trips with our kids, at co-op. I mean, yeah, we all do some drop-off stuff probably too, but we're usually there. So we have so much opportunity to model, even if it's not in that moment, like Amanda said, even if later on the car ride home, you're like, hey, I noticed today on the playground, you had a conversation with so-and-so. It seems like it might have been tense from the other side of the playground, but I couldn't quite tell, what was that all about? We are there for that. So we have so many more opportunities to be able to boost these skills, which is awesome. And despite the fact that Amanda's got some amazing resources for you, you don't necessarily need to have a full curriculum. You don't need to go online and Google SEL curriculum for fourth grade. You need intention, you need honesty, you need time. Just be present and be a caring parent. Focus on that whole child mentality, and then sprinkle in some of those resources that Amanda mentioned. If you can get some of those books at the library, or you can toss in a few OutSchool classes, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, there are curriculum out there. There are 100%, right? You can pay $20 a month for this one. I know my kiddo did through another program, right? He did one and I looked it up just to see like how much, because it was a solid curriculum. And I was like, well, let me see how much it is. But it's designed for schools and the cheapest license was $3,500. Like, that's ridiculous. Schools are buying curriculum. School districts and these kinds of things, they're buying it. And there's a big push, like every school needs to have some type of curriculum. And I generally agree with that, because this is not the kind of thing when you're managing a classroom of 30 kids, you can't be dropping these lessons in constantly here and there. And, oh, I see you're having problems. Let's talk about it. Classroom management doesn't allow that, right? So having a curriculum and spending thousands on it, fine, it works there, but you don't have to do that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, if you go and look at those resources we talked about, of like, look at the reels and the suggestions of SEL books, I bet you will be shocked at how many of them you already have on your bookshelf. If you are listening to us, if you follow Homeschool Moms Unfiltered, you're probably the kind of parent that's like, oh yeah, I've got some of those. Okay, I'm not totally failing this. You're doing a good job.
Yes,
Really.
you are.
Yeah. All right. So with that, let's do our mantra for the week. So when we teach kids how to understand themselves and connect with others, we're giving them tools that last a lifetime. SEL isn't extra, it's essential.
True story. Yeah. Awesome job. All right, homeschool peeps. We hope you have an awesome week of homeschooling, and we will catch you here again next week for a new topic episode. On Thursdays for the next couple of weeks, we have some reruns of book club episodes that are classic vintage Homeschool Moms Unfiltered from probably before you ever found us, because it's when we were pretty new. And it's one of our favorite books. It's called Normal Sucks by Jonathan Mooney. So those will be dropping the next couple of Thursdays and culminating with an interview with Jonathan Mooney, which is awesome sauce. So have an awesome week. Happy homeschooling, and we'll catch you again in the next episode.
Yeah, have a great one.